Okay, well, welcome and sincerely thank you all for such a great response. We appreciate you being here, and we put on programs like this. This one's unique, but programs like this once or twice a week, and a lot of work goes into these. We are committed to keeping them all free and accessible to everyone. But if you can help out with a donation, it's always most appreciated. So consider that, if you will. I know many of the folks here on the screens, but many I don't. So for people who are here for the first or second or third time, a hearty welcome to you, and thanks for being here. My name's Geoff O'Keefe. I'm the executive director of Zen Peacemakers. And there's been a planning group that put together this series, which we'll tell you a little bit about here in just a second. But I do want to mark, and this timing was not intentional. I think this worked out kind of accidentally. But just the other day was the 5-year anniversary of the recognition and declaration of COVID as a pandemic. And I think there's something appropriate about us meeting today in this way to talk about our Earth and how we walk on our Earth. So with that, this is the first session of a series of 5 meetings, and I think my friend, I'm not sure whose term this was, but we've titled this "Earthing" on not squandering our planet. And earthing might be a made-up word. We've given it a definition. Earthing is for an individual to become more in touch with the earth as a whole, to realize a more inclusive sense of self, and to become embedded in the more than human world, to touch the earth and ground oneself in the midst of a storm, and to take refuge in the earth, like the fourth treasure. I love this. I love the title, and I love the definition. So we have, you can see this on the website. We have 5 sessions well planned, and we're meeting today. We'll meet again on March 20, March 27, April 3, and April 10. So 5 Thursdays in a row. Please join us for all of these. Please tell your friends to come join too. So we will have opportunity for you to ask questions, make comments a little bit later on. So let's go ahead and jump in. We're so pleased and grateful that our friend David Loy has agreed to be our keynote and to kick off this series today. But I do want to introduce the group that has put this effort together. We tried to be as global as we could. So I'll say all the names, and then they can go around and introduce themselves. Our friend Martin Purdell from Melbourne, Australia is here. Kathleen Batke. Yep, and I'll come back to you, Martin, in a minute. Kathleen Batke is here from Germany. Olga and Ovidio from Brazil are here. And Chris from Vancouver Island, British Columbia, which is in Canada, and will stay in Canada as far as I'm concerned. And David Loy from here in Colorado, where I am too. So at any rate, I'm gonna mute myself and pass to Martin. Martin, if you wanted to say a word or two, and then we'll move around the circle.
Thanks, Geoff. Thanks for the introduction, and wonderful to see you all. My name's Martin. I'm sitting on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation here in Melbourne, Australia, and it's I have to catch myself Friday morning, and it's just been wonderful to be part of this group. And as I was listening to Geoff, just holding that word earthing And in some ways, for me personally, and I think for the group, as we discovered that word, it's been a somewhat of a reinforcing koan or mantra to come back to as we're beginning this journey over the 5 weeks of beginning to reflect on our connection and interdependence and interconnection with the earth, and how it is that we preserve and regenerate this earth. So with that in mind, we're really encouraging everyone to hold earthing over these 5 weeks, and to consider practices that emerge out of that deepen our preservation and regeneration of the earth. Now I'll pass it on to Kathleen as we go around. Over to you, Kathleen.
Thanks, Martin. Yeah. Greetings to everyone. It's wonderful to earth with you here from Germany, where in these days where our government and parliament are negotiating millions and trillions of euros for arms and military. So this is a strange situation, and that makes it even more rewarding and beautiful to stay here with you, share time with you, and earth with you, feeling the interconnection with us, with all of us. So I'm looking forward. I'll be I will guide the 4th session on April 3, and I pass over to Olga and Ovidio. I don't know if he's back in the meantime, who will do the 3rd session. Hi, Olga. Great to see you. Your microphone, Olga.
Over the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Again, it's very nice to be here with you from all over in our earth, and to cultivate our hopes. When Kathleen was telling us about this very unfortunate global moment in which so much money is being spent in arms in Europe, but we have to recognize that this guy that has just come into the White House is being able to maybe reach some peace and stop the killing. And from looking from the southern part of the world, I mean Brazil, it's nice to see Europe maybe reorganizing as a 3rd or 4th potency. Know that we maybe will be able to equilibrate a little bit the powers in the world. Anyway, this is the background for us talking about earthing. And I'm sorry, I will also say again what Geoff just mentioned, that we are celebrating, quote unquote, today, 5 years of the beginning of the pandemics of COVID that so dramatically showed us, on the one hand, how much we are interconnected as inhabitants of Earth, and at the same time, how powerful we could be if we would use our power that were shown during the pandemic to develop the vaccines and to stop pollution in many places, because we stopped producing or moving around. So we are very powerful as human beings if we just organize to do it well. So nice being with you. I hope this will be a hopeful 5 modules encounter. Ovidio, please.
Hello, everybody. So we are really in South Brazil, near Uruguay and Argentina. And North Brazil is closer to Miami than to where we live. So you can have an idea of how far we are in the south here. So, and we'll see you in the third meeting. So, okay. Next one is Chris.
Hi, everyone. Greetings from the unceded territories of the Lekwungen peoples, which is Vancouver Island here in BC, south of Vancouver Island. It's nice to see so many of you, so many faces that I actually know, which is crazy. I decided to celebrate the 5th year of the pandemic by getting COVID. So I've had COVID for the last week or so, and yeah, it sucks. I am going to be tending to the second week, so next week, when we're going to go from the big kind of global scale to the really intimate local scale. Like what might it be like to tend to the wounded earth on our own doorsteps? Something intimate and close like that. So I hope you can come with some stories for us for next week. And with that, you've all waited long enough. I can see that you're all holding your breath with anxiety and tension, waiting for David. So I'm going to hand over to David. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Chris. That's one of the nicest introductions I've had in a while. First of all, thank you to Geoff and the Zen Peacemakers for creating what I think is going to be not only an interesting but a really important series. And also thanks to all of you for joining us today. The title of my talk, in case you don't remember, is The New Bodhisattva Path or the Eco-Sattva Path, something like that. I don't think I need to begin by persuading you that we live in dangerous, difficult times. I think we all know that, and we probably wouldn't be here if we didn't feel that. For me, there's a little extra to that when I remember something that Noam Chomsky said in an interview a few years ago. Not only is this dangerous time, but it's actually, in his opinion, the most dangerous time in human history. Why did he say that? Interesting, he gave 3 reasons why it is most dangerous. Number 1, the climate crisis, which I actually find interesting because he didn't mention at all the fact that the climate crisis is just part of a much larger ecological situation, right? Including species extinction event, loss of topsoil, forests, toxic pollutants in the air, the earth, the water, our bodies, and so forth. The second reason he mentioned why this is so dangerous is the danger of nuclear war. And he actually said this before Russia invaded Ukraine, before Gaza happened. And thirdly, he mentioned the danger, the decline of democracy and the rise of authoritarianism around the world. And needless to say, he mentioned that long before the return of Trump. So unfortunately, ironically, notably, I think actually the situation that we're in today is actually worse than it was when he gave his opinion. It is indeed a very, very dangerous time. And there's this really important question then, what does that mean for us? Maybe I can ask this as kind of a rhetorical question. How do you feel? What do you feel when, somebody rubs our noses in that? If you're like me, you feel a number of different things. And one way to kind of express them is to cite a few other people who have also talked about this. For example, J.R.R. Tolkien, the Lord of the Rings, a book I really like. There's a really interesting passage in there where Gandalf and Frodo are talking, and it's a really dangerous situation, right? They're against the Dark Lord, and it doesn't look good. And Frodo says, "I wish it need not have happened in my time. So do I, says Gandalf, and so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. But Joanna Macy said something a little bit different. Another quote. I feel so fortunate to be alive now. People might think I'm crazy, but just speaking personally, it's an incredible thing to be alive with my fellow humans at a time when the future is at stake, when the future looks so bleak. Right now, we can be here to honor life. Which is it? Can both be true? We have to put up with it, or can we also be excited that we're actually born at this particular time? Let me offer you one more quote from Tom Rivet-Carnac, who I believe was one of the important figures at the Paris climate talks back in 2015, because I think he puts his sort of finger on it. You have the biggest opportunity in all of human history to live an incredibly meaningful life. The actions that you take because of the accident of the time of your birth, right? The fact that we're born at this time, are of an order of magnitude and importance, right? Much more important compared to most people who've lived before. Because you are going to affect the future of life on earth in 50, 500, and 500,000 years by what you do in the next couple of decades. So, no one is asking for an easy life. Really deep down, what we're asking for is a meaningful life. For me, this touches on a couple classical Zen dialogues. I forget the teacher involved, but one of them was asked, what should we do when difficult times come? And the Zen master or Chan master in China, he replied, it's a little bit difficult to show on camera, but I'm pretty sure welcome. Welcome them. Our path isn't about avoiding difficulties. In fact, for those of us who consider ourselves in a spiritual path, sometimes it's those situations when we ourselves grow the most, right? A relative of Zen Master Ryokan said, is there no way to avoid calamities? And Ryokan replied, when you are met with a calamity, meet it completely. We could say that's become non-dual with it. That is the wondrous dharma of avoiding calamities. Meet it fully. And finally, a student asked Chan Master Yunmen, what is the fruit of a lifetime of practice? And he replied, responding appropriately. Responding appropriately. I love that, right? Our practice isn't about somehow escaping, evading, transcending this world, our lives now, but making us more present. And we have to be present with what is confronting us. But how do we do that? I mean, what does Buddhism have to offer that can help us understand our situation today and respond appropriately? Maybe nothing. I mean, we have to acknowledge the Buddha lived, some 2,400 years ago in Iron Age India. And he, like all of the other Asian Buddhist traditions that developed, they're pre-modern. None of them developed in order to engage with the kind of situation we're in today. Nonetheless, there are lots of really important implications of Buddhist teachings that I think are very helpful. In some ways, the one that most fascinates me is the parallel between our individual predicament, the fact that our fundamental dukkha or suffering is due to our sense of separation, the delusion of separation between ourselves and others, the rest of the world. Amazing parallel between that individual predicament, which Buddhism has always talked about, and our collective predicament today, the fact that we as a species feel so separate from the rest of the world, that we somehow feel that our well-being is separable from that of the biosphere, from the earth. And of course, the ecological crisis is a stark reminder that that's simply not true. But what I would like to focus on today is what I think is the single most important thing that the Buddhist traditions have to offer. And that is, as I've already said, the Bodhisattva, or maybe new Bodhisattva or eco-Sattva path. I mean, in the Buddhist literature, especially in Mahayana, there's a lot about bodhisattvas. And one could spend a lot of time going through that. But what I would like to do today is basically focus on 3 points that I think especially need to be emphasized, right? 3 aspects. Number 1, bodhisattvas have a double practice, a 2-sided practice. They continue to work on their own spiritual practice, their own personal transformation, but they know that that's not sufficient. We need to be engaged, we need to be socially engaged, we need to be helping others because they're not really separate from ourselves. So it's not simply a matter that we have personal transformation, right, individual practice, and social engagement. It's not as though we have 2 practices that, simply happen to fit together. I think we can go and say that they actually need each other if we're going to be as successful as we need them to be, right? I mean, if you think for a moment, I don't know if you yourself are an activist, but think of activist and think that is a difficult job, right? And in some ways, it's very easy to become vulnerable to frustration, anger, depression, fatigue, burnout. A lot of times we're frustrated. We try hard, things don't really work out because there's really strong resistance. The frustration that tends to weaken what someone is able to contribute. And that's why it can be so incredibly important for people who are engaged socially, ecologically, to ground, to root that practice in some kind of meditative practice, because that can give them the equanimity, the stability, the serenity that can keep them going even when things don't seem to be going well. But I think it really works on the other side as well. I think we usually come to something like Buddhist practice because there's some sense of something missing, something not quite right in our own lives. And therefore, naturally, there's a certain kind of self-preoccupation at the beginning, right? We have some sense of lack, something missing, something isn't quite right. And through the practice, we begin to address that. But if things go well, what we begin to realize is at the root of our lack or problem, dissatisfaction, is the delusion of a separate self, which I alluded to before. And therefore, as we begin to see that, if we continue to be focused only on our own spiritual development, we're actually starting to reinforce the fundamental problem. From this point, from this perspective, becoming engaged socially, ecologically, it's not a distraction from the fundamental practice, but in fact, it's a continuation, and I would say a necessary continuation of it. I'm reminded of something that Franz Kafka said in a letter. Kafka, the Czech writer. You can hold back from the sufferings of the world, he said. That is something you can do. But perhaps this very holding back is the one suffering you could have avoided. Why? Well, putting words in his mouth, because holding back is ultimately reinforcing that dualism, the separation, the sense that my well-being is separate from yours. This brings me to what is probably my all-time favorite quotation, not even by a Buddhist. It's by the Neo-Vedantin teacher in India, Nisargadatta, right? He famously said, quote, "When I look inside and see that I'm nothing, that is wisdom. When I look outside and see that I am everything, that is love. Between these two, my life flows." Wisdom and love are, as we more often say in Buddhism, right? Wisdom and compassion. And he really points out the relationship between them, right? The wisdom, realizing I'm nothing, that there's no me separate. And then the love, it's not a feeling, but it's rather a way of being, a way of living in the world where we express that love in terms of what we do, how we relate to other people, how we relate to the world. I think it's important to stress this because I think there's a kind of, some of us have a sort of romanticized idea about, well, somebody like Milarepa, the great Tibetan yogi who secluded himself in a cave and supposedly went all the way to Buddhahood in one lifetime. Joanna Macy said something different. She said, "It is my experience that the world itself has a role to play in our awakening. Its very brokenness and need call to us, summoning us to walk out of the prison of self-concern." I remember in the early days of my practice, the Maui Zendo, it was interesting. It wasn't, certainly wasn't like a Japanese Zen center. Mostly it was a group of us hippies, but we were serious about the practice. Things happened. There were Kensho, glimpses of enlightenment openings, but I think most of us realize too that actually what's more difficult is to embody those insights in how we actually live. That's the real challenge. I remember Baba Ramdas said, "So you think you're enlightened, huh? Well, go spend the holidays with your family. See how you get on. See where you're still stuck," in other words, right? He also talked about our practice as a self-sharpening sword, right? Through our practice, things happen, we are changed, but then we go out and we engage in the world and we see usually pretty quickly where we're still stuck, and that can bring us back to our own practice again. To summarize, I mean, engagement with the kind of world's problems, it's really important, therefore, to see it's not a distraction from our personal spiritual practice, but an essential part of it. And you could say that the one who benefits most from the social engagement of the Bodhisattva is the Bodhisattva herself or himself, right? As Kukai or Kobodaishi, one of the great Japanese founders of Buddhism, said, "The measure of our enlightenment is how we serve others." And goodness knows we're in a situation now where we are very much called to serve. That's the first point. The second point is, I sometimes talk about the new Bodhisattva path because I think we have a somewhat different and frankly somewhat better understanding of dukkha, right? Dukkha, as most or all of you know, that's the original Pali word for suffering. And as the Buddha said, that's what his teaching is all about. Four Noble Truths, all about dukkha. Dukkha, cause of dukkha, end of dukkha, how to end dukkha. The Buddha said himself, all he taught was dukkha and how to end it. But, sometimes we understand that in too narrow a fashion. Especially in terms of something like karma, that, we're the products of our own karma. So if we have dukkha, not to blame anybody else. Frankly, I once heard a Tibetan teacher say, or ruminate, "Oh, what terrible karma all of those Jews in Nazi Europe must have had to be born at that time and at that place." And I just remember thinking, whoa, This is unacceptable. We don't blame the victims in that way. And what I think is really important to see is how the three poisons that Buddhism traditionally emphasizes, a very interesting contrast from Christianity, right? Christianity, it's fundamentally good versus evil. For Buddhism, it's much more about delusion, ignorance, but also the way that expresses itself in the world is these three poisons: greed, ill will, and delusion. And to say it again, usually we understand those as individual problems. What I think is so important now is to realize that no, they're not just individual, they're collective. More than that, they have been institutionalized in the sense that they seem to have taken on a life of their own, right? And therefore they require us to work together to address them. It's very different from just working on our own. If we're going to address these institutionalized ones, we have to come together, right? But what do I mean by institutionalized poisons? First one, institutionalized greed. Well, if greed means you never have enough, you always want more, frankly, I think that's a pretty good description of our economic system, right? Not only do consumers never consume enough, corporations are never profitable enough, their stock prices never high enough, market share never big enough. This tendency to want to grow indefinitely, which creates such a problem on a finite planet. But why is more and more always better if it can be never be enough? Secondly, institutionalized ill will. Well, I think we're seeing plenty of examples of that, in particular militarism. Let's acknowledge that if measured by the amount of money devoted to its military, the United States is the most militarized nation in human history. And of course, if you have a military, you're going to want to use it once in a while, right? Finally, institutionalized delusion. In the past, I used to talk about advertising, how that is constantly manipulating us, teaching us to define ourselves as consumers. But I think in the last few years, we've seen enough examples of fake news and the way that the media have been manipulated to control what we think and therefore how we vote, what we do. I think it's pretty obvious what institutionalized delusion means and how the media have been engaging in that. From what I can see, during my lifetime as a Buddhist practitioner, I think there has been a transformation in American Buddhism, more emphasis upon, what I might call individual bodhisattva activity, helping individuals, thinking of things like helping homeless people, prison dharma, hospices. You could say that we have become better at pulling drowning people out of the river. But what we are not very good at yet is sort of asking, understanding, and addressing why there are so many more people drowning in the river. Who or what is pushing them in upstream, right? I remember something Bill McKibben said when he was in Paris for the climate talks in 2015. Somebody came up to him and asked him, so what can I do as an individual? And he said, well, stop being an individual. I mean, we know obviously there are things that we do need to do as an individual. Reduce our carbon footprint, and obviously enough, and so forth. But he's making an important point that if we're going to address these collective institutionalized poisons and problems, we need much stronger sanghas. We need much stronger communities. And frankly, it seems to me that's one of the major challenges for American Buddhism today, because we still inherit this legacy where we think of Buddhism as something we do individually for our own individual transformation. That's the second point. The third and final point that I want to make is that the Bodhisattva path, as Buddhism has described it, expressed it, encouraged it, it does not tell us what to do, but it tells us a lot about how to do it. And I already touched on that, right? It can't tell us what to do. Our situation is so different from that of the Asian Buddhist traditions. We could go into more, how one follows the Bodhisattva path. We could talk, for example, about these 6 paramitas or perfections that bodhisattvas are supposed to develop. As you probably know, bodhisattvas traditionally, the focus for them isn't the Eightfold Path of early Buddhism. Rather, it's these 6 perfections that develop, right? We develop to the greatest possible degree certain character traits, the 6 being generosity, ethical behavior, patience or endurance, persistence, determination, meditation, some kind of mindfulness practice, and finally wisdom, right? The prajna paramita, the higher wisdom, the non-dual wisdom. Those are wonderful. You can read about them at all kinds of places, but none of those gets at what I think is most distinctive and most powerful about spiritual activism, the activism of bodhisattvas, which is simply that bodhisattvas act without attachment to the results of what they do. In the Pali Canon, the earliest teachings, right, the Buddha actually says that one characteristic of an awakened person is that their actions are nirasa, right, expectation, without expectation. You could even translate without hope. And there's also a Tibetan Lojong aphorism, a classic formulation of this, quote, abandon all hope or expectation of fruition. Don't get caught up in how you're going to be in the future. Stay in the present moment. Interestingly, this isn't just a Buddhist point, a Buddhist emphasis. If you're at all familiar with the Bhagavad Gita, right? The Gita, probably the most famous most popular Hindu text, right? It talks about these different paths to God. And one of them is karma yoga, karma and that the original meaning, action. The idea that, as the Gita says, your right is to the work, never to the fruits. We do what we do because it's the right thing to do, regardless of the fruits. So this, I think, is really important, but I think it's also really easy to misunderstand. Acting without attachment can suggest a kind of a casual attitude. And in Buddhism, there's so much emphasis on our intentions, on our motivations, that we might think, well, what's important is not really whether anything happens. It's the purity of my intention. And of course, if that's our attitude, well, it's pretty likely nothing ever will happen. I think that misses the basic point about what non-attachment is. And what I'd like to conclude is by spending a little time unpacking this non-attachment to results, right? To begin with, consider the difference between running, say, a 100-meter dash and a marathon. When you run a 100-meter dash, you don't have time to think about anything except getting to the other end as quickly as possible. But of course, you can't run a marathon that way, right? If you do, you'll burn yourself out really quickly, and you probably won't even make it to the end, right? Instead, you have to pace yourself. You have to follow. And friends, I can't say I run marathons, but friends who do say it's often better if you don't even think about the goal. Just focus on being right here and now, which of course is what our Buddhist practice has always emphasized, right? The Japanese have a term for it, tada, just this. You could say, just this step, just this step. In fact, in Buddhism too, we talk about tathata, thusness, and the Buddha is sometimes described as the Tathagata, the one who just comes, the one who just goes, right? You are still approaching the goal because you're running in a certain direction. But you don't have to focus on getting to that goal. In fact, that can be actually something that gets in the way. So we return to the present moment. We return to just step, what needs to be done right here and now, which of course is what our practice has always encouraged us to do. I think that's important, but there's also much more to say. Although a marathon race is a long one, I mean, you keep going in the right direction, you'll get to the end. But what about a race, or a path, rather, with no end? With a task so difficult that one might easily become discouraged? What about a path such as, saving all sentient beings in the universe? How do we understand not attachment in that case? What I'm referring to, of course, is the 4 Bodhisattva vows that are recited at least once a day, I think, in just about every Zen center. And the first of those vows says quite clearly, living beings are numberless. I vow to save or liberate, free, whatever. I vow to save them all. Well, from one perspective, if you think about that, it's absolutely crazy, right? We are vowing to do something that cannot possibly be done. But of course, that is the point. It's not about getting to the end. It is about a reorientation in the meaning of our lives, right? It's a different way, a new way of being in the world, and with interesting implications, because no matter what happens, it's like it doesn't defeat that vow. I mean, we might get discouraged for a while, but we continue. So we do what we can to help somebody or something. If we're successful, well, that's great, but we don't sort of, oh, well, that's done. No, there's always more to do. Likewise, if we're not successful, maybe we're frustrated, we try again, maybe in a different way. Or maybe we have to focus, completely reorient ourselves there. But the vow continues. Yes, we may well become discouraged, but we don't let that defeat us. We kind of do the best we can to dust ourselves off, get up, and continue, right? Moving on to the next thing. And expressing it that way, it can sound like such a hassle, right? What a drag. In fact, it's really the opposite. Once we really realize our non-duality, our non-separation from other people, our non-separation from this magnificent planet that takes care of us all, this is the way that we want to live. I mean, why would we want to do anything else? It becomes not only our passion, but our joy. But there's one more point about this non-attachment that really stands out for me. And let me end with this. Let's be quite honest. The climate crisis, or you could say larger ecological situation, it looks very difficult. And there is a real possibility that our efforts will be in vain. Privately and sometimes publicly, you have scientists becoming pessimists, and that's even before Trump was elected. We may be very close to tipping points or even have passed them, such that civilization as we know it is going to become too hot, too difficult. It's difficult to anticipate what's going to happen, but in many ways it doesn't look good. The fundamental point here is that we just don't know, right? We just don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's possible. We just don't know. Just don't know. Sound familiar to anybody? All right. Sound familiar to those on the Zen Peacemaker path? Of course, right? That's the first tenet of the Zen Peacemakers, along with bearing witness and taking actions that arise from bearing witness. Roshi Gyokyo Nakao described don't knowing in a very interesting way. She called it a flash of openness, or a sudden shift to being present in the moment in which we take shelter or we open up to this place. It's like we become more spacious, more aware of our own reactivity, and more open to the perspectives of others. In other words, not knowing is not a fixed position. I just don't know. But it's a way of engaging with the world as it is right here and now, a kind of an openness where we don't know what's going to happen next. We don't necessarily know what's possible, but we're going to do the best we can according to what we know now or what we think we know, ready to change when our understanding or the world itself changes. And that's really important, that kind of don't know attitude, rather than being dogmatic. There's a little poem by Wendell Berry called The Real Work that speaks to this. He says, "It may be that when we no longer know what to do, we have come to our real work. And that when we no longer know which way to go, we have come to our real purpose. The mind that is not baffled is not employed. The impeded stream is the one that sings." Wendell Berry. One of my teachers, Robert Aiken Roshi, liked to say that our task isn't to clear up the mystery, but to make the mystery clear. That our spiritual path isn't about sort of having some experience and now I understand everything about what's going on and how things work. It's kind of like the opposite, kind of opening up to a mysterious and sacred world, always changing, whether or not we notice. And, we access this world not by grasping it, but by opening up to it and being taken by it, and which is what allows us to manifest something greater than our egos. Traditionally, not knowing is something debilitating. At least that's the way people tend to think about it. But from this perspective, we can say there's something empowering about us. I think it's important to emphasize the distinction between this and optimism, or pessimism for that matter. Optimism, pessimism, interesting kind of conceptual duality where each is sort of dependent upon the other, right? My favorite definition of a pessimist that I've read is a pessimist is someone who has had to live with an optimist, right? Or for that matter, even being hopeful. At least if we use the word hope, we have to use it in a special sense, not just sort of sitting back and feeling hopeful. Joanna Macy, I think the author of this great book on active hope, she's actually rather critical about the way we usually think of hope. She says, "I find that assuring people there's hope, including myself, is not all that useful. In Buddhism, there is no word for hope. It would be viewed as a distraction from what's at hand. It takes us out of the present moment and into conjecture about the future. All we can really affirm is where we want to put our attention. We have a choice. Do I want to give up and surrender to the great unraveling? Or do we want to join those working for a livable future? Since the outcome is uncertain," she says, "we have to enjoy doing something exhilarating and useful without knowing for sure if it's going to work out." Right? Wendell Berry said, "We don't have the right to ask whether we're going to succeed or not. The only question we have the right to ask is, what is the right thing to do? What does this earth require of us if we want to continue to live on it?" Instead of this duality of sort of hope and despair, pessimism, optimism, I think there's another pair that is important that we need to cultivate. gratitude and grief. Because underlying both of them is what really motivates bodhisattvas, which is to say, love. A couple years in downtown London, I saw a little memorial to the victims of 9/11, a little stone memorial in a square. And the only thing it said was, grief is the price we pay for love. Grief is the price we pay for love. It's important that what we do is not motivated primarily by fear or anger, but by love. Someone called Martin Soul Reader, I don't know who he is, but I think he put it very well when he said, the world doesn't want to be saved. It wants to be loved. That's how you save it. The world doesn't want to be saved. It wants to be loved. Gratitude and grief. Grief is very different from despair, but I think it's interesting. They often get confused because we're afraid to feel our grief. Sometimes it gets turned into despair. We're afraid of our grief. We're afraid that it's going to overwhelm us. We'll be blown away. But, there's something purifying about grief, I think it's important to feel our grief, or at least speaking personally, for me, there's this little place inside, or part of me, part of my character, where there is grief. And I'll be quite honest, it's not that I want to get rid of it. I want that reminder. It's like a constant reminder, It's something that constantly can cut through the bullshit of my life and ask me, hey, what's really important, right? The things, it's so easy to get caught up in this and that. And the grief says, wait a minute, remember, right? Come back. Remember what's really going on right now at this dangerous time in human history. Remember what we really need to focus on. Right? So, to conclude, all of this points to the deepest meaning of non-attachment to results, of don't know mind in this time of world crisis. Our task is to do the very best we can, not knowing what the consequences will be, not knowing if our efforts will make any difference whatsoever. That to me sums up non-attachment to results. Have we already passed tipping points? Maybe it's too late. We don't know. But it's okay that we don't know. Of course, there's intention. We try to be strategic. We try to do the best we can. We really do try to change things. But ultimately, what we do is our gift. A gift. It's our gift to each other. It's our gift to the earth. And as we know, if we give a gift because we're expecting something in return, it's not really a gift, is it? A gift is given freely. And it's important that our Bodhisattva, eco-sattva activities be a kind of a gift. We don't know, we can't know if what we do is important, but it is important for us to do it. And there's something joyful about it. Rabindranath Tagore, the great Indian writer, Nobel Prize winner, mystic and philosopher as well, he said, I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted and behold, service was joy. Of course, to be so unattached to the result of our efforts is to set a pretty high bar, right? Maybe we won't be able to do that. But in a way, that's okay. We're not called upon to be perfect. We're called upon to do the best we can. And again, there's this wonderful thing. We have this personal practice, meditation, mindfulness, so that even when we get frustrated because what we hope doesn't happen, we can return to our practice, and then we can find our center. We can ground ourselves again. Frankly, it seems to me, finishing now, if contemporary Buddhism, if contemporary Buddhists don't want to do this, to engage in this way, to follow this Bodhisattva path, then it seems to me that maybe Buddhism isn't what the world needs right now. But what I've tried to do is sort of outline some of the ways in which I think Buddhism can play a very important part in helping us engage with this most dangerous time in human history. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, David. Wonderful. By the way, at this point, I'll mention to everybody here, we do record these, and it'll be available for you on the website in a couple of days once Jim has a chance to edit and clean up. So if you want to revisit David's talk and the conversation that we're going to have now, or share with someone else that wasn't able to attend, please do. We love the idea of amplifying our programs. So once again, David, thank you so much for a really thoughtful grounding in, how we begin. How do we begin to engage? We have half an hour, and thank you all for sticking with us. We've got most 60 plus folks here. And I think we can open up for questions or comments or reactions. David, I'm going to unpin you so that if we can, so that removes spotlight. There we go. And co-host way ahead of me, and so is Helen. Because there are more of you than I can see, we'll need to use the electronic hand down under React. So if you can do that, and I'll call on you as I see your little digital hand come up. And if we can keep our comments lean, there's a lot of us, and we'd like to be able to accommodate as many people as possible. My dear friend Koho Sensei, please go ahead.
Thanks, Geoff. Just to express my gratitude and contentment to see David Lloyd Roshi. And I will ask you, Geoff, to read my comments. It's a short poem that I wrote down in our Let's Retreat in Brazil when I had the privilege to learn and to be in the presence of David Lloyd Roshi. Then I copy here in the chat, if you can read, Geoff, because your voice is beautiful and your English for sure is better than mine.
I'm learning. Is it in chat yet? Oh, there it is. Thank you, co-host. So you'd like me to read this? David Lloyd Roshi. Crossing borders, showing the oneness in the diversity. You brought us the real and natural path, the only and simple one. The deep blue sky in your eyes, the silent earth in your heart, the transforming fire in your wise words, the Dharma wind in your free mind, and the formless liberation in your humble presence. May your vows be fully fulfilled here, now, always, and everywhere. I bow to you. Reverences.
Thank you, Koho. Thank you, Koho. I won't say anything more except I'm grateful for his gratitude. Something like that. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks, Koho. All the way from Switzerland. Helen, please. I see your digital hand up there. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, David. What I noticed in my efforts of in here in Sacramento, we're doing a little vigil for kindness and democracy. So it's very much in the spirit that you're saying it's not about numbers or publicity, but it's lovely when people honk, and yeah, it's wonderful. But what I notice in my efforts is so many people are so exhausted by their personal lives, and the situation of the world is adding to their exhaustion, that they cannot move toward this sense of the bigger whole that you're talking about. I want to be able to let that go, but I notice I'm attached to showing them this is a path of joy. They're not maybe of a spaciousness that could take that in. I'm sure everyone here is familiar with this, that I totally am compassionate with their overwhelm. Can you remark on that, please?
Wow. I mean, as you know, as we all know, that's a really, really important point. And frankly, I don't know if there's a one size fits all answer. Just speaking personally, I have these moments, times of overwhelm for sure. And, my son is long grown, so I'm kind of lucky, and I'm retired. So luckier than most in terms of all the things that might otherwise, preoccupy my time. One general point that certainly applies to me, my wife keeps reminding me, and maybe all of us, one of the implications of our time, I think, is a kind of encouragement to simplify our lives, to sort of, it's so easy to, we all have, no, many of us, maybe most of us, have very comfortable lifestyles, and we're quite accustomed to that. And this is not anything to say against, times of relaxation and pleasure and being with friends. But I think there is this great koan that we're all faced with now, really, which is, in order to respond appropriately, in order to sort out, maybe now's a good time to mention these three questions that I sometimes end with, kind of three koans, three mindfulness exercises, right? Number one, asking ourselves, what do I have to offer, given my total situation? Everything about my situation, age, health, do I need money? Everything. Number two, given what I have to offer, what are the good possibilities for me? There are so many issues we could connect with, but if we try to do too many, that will really burn ourselves out and don't know will have much effect at all. I think we do need to focus. And then finally, given the ones that are possible, which calls to our heart, what really touches us? So it's not an ego decision, it's more opening up that we feel called upon to engage. And my sense is, when I feel called or connected to in that way, kind of a non-dual pull, then that by itself tends to kind of push its way through all the other things that I otherwise get distracted by. And of course, that grief that I mentioned before kind of helps cut through the bullshit too, frankly. So I guess that's all I can say. And, I think that challenge, that problem you mentioned, is something we all face and have to work with. Yeah, thank you for it. Yeah.
Helen, thank you for your question, and David, wonderful answer. Thank you. And David Phillip from Ireland, a fellow.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Very well, thanks, David.
Thank you.
Davey, I'm sorry.
No worries. Delighted to be here. I'm Davey. I'm based in rural Ireland. Thanks, David. There was a lot in there. I met you and heard you speak in Dublin last year, and I'm really looking forward to your retreat in July in Club Jordan Eco Village, where I'm based. So
Oh,
really
nice.
looking
In
forward to
Ireland.
that. Yeah. Following on from Helen, I think there's a theme of, how do we cope? How do we deal with? How do we build resilience to navigate the challenges we're in? That proverb, how do we, may you live in interesting times, a curse or a blessing. And here we are. And as you were speaking, David, I really felt, I took a few notes of, what I was getting. And I think that first piece was to bear witness to what's going on. There's so much atrocity. It's just ridiculous now, isn't it? And then, as you were saying, respond appropriately. My work is very local based with a very global context in sort of coaching communities to be more resilient. And I think that sense of wholeness, that sort of worldview, an ecological worldview is really needed if we're going to be able to do more together as we face these challenges. So yeah, and I was taken by Thich Nhat Hanh's "The Next Buddha Will Be a Sangha," that there is that sense of community building that will get us through and that resilience we need. But not only that, it's at that level we have a good life. And I think that's what we're missing. We can't imagine good living or what a good life might be. So yeah, thank you, David. And maybe just to riff on that, how do we cope and deal with the mess we're in?
Wow, thank you for that too, because you reminded me of something else I could have and should say in response to that earlier question, that something about our modern life, consumerism, and even the Buddhist path, it tends to individualize us, right? It's like at some deep level, this sense, it's my life, my well-being separate, got to pursue, my own enlightenment is separate, da, da, da. And I think one of the really important implications of this challenge is that we really need to form stronger communities. And speaking from what I can see, American Western Buddhism, lots of Buddha teachers, lots of Dharma teachings, but where I still sense where we are weakest is with Sangha, with the development of community. And that just, for me, in my mind, it becomes more and more to the forefront, which, of course, emphasizes what we're doing here today, emphasizes the importance of the Zen Peacemaker movement and as an important development in that direction. But there is also a sense, I think we have to acknowledge, that it can feel like it's going against the grain, leave me alone so I could just focus on my own equanimity. And there's something, as I tried to say, there can be something kind of self-defeating about that, when what we really need is to feel that we are part of each other. And as things get worse in the future, frankly, which I think they may well do, the single most important, I don't like to use the word resource, but the single most important thing may be if we are part of a loving community where people feel connected and responsible to each other. That may be the single most important thing of all. Yeah, I wonder. Thank you, Davey.
Well, maybe just to say one more word on it. So I think that sense of building community, and what we've been maybe saying in this eco-dharma sustainability movements is that we are facing these challenges right now. In the last few months, we realize here we are, we've arrived. So it's even more urgent what you're saying, David. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know how much we want to get. I don't know how much we want to talk about he who must not be named, but it's getting worse. It's gotten a lot worse, as we can all see. Thank you also for the plug. There's going to be an eco-dharma retreat in Ireland the first week of July. and Davey will be attending, Donna will be attending, and I'll be attending too. So if anyone in Ireland or Europe wants to join us, as far as I know, there's still openings there. Yeah, thank you, Davey.
Maybe Donald could put the details in the chat, or a link in the chat, Donald.
Contact details if somebody wants to follow up. There's also going to be a retreat in Northern Ireland at eco-dharma and near Barcelona in Spain. There are 3 European retreats in July. If anyone's interested, you can contact me and I can follow up there.
You want to say something about the one in Santa Fe as well, David?
Thank you for that. Yes. In the whole month of May, we're going to have something totally new. As far as I know, it hasn't happened before, but I'm going to be the resident teacher at Mountain Cloud Zendo. And we're going to have a whole month of residency focused on eco-dharma, the whole month. It's going to be talks, practices, discussions, readings. If anyone is interested, please go to the Mountain Cloud website or contact me. But if you really want to go deeper into this question of eco-dharma, and if you have time in May, I expect it to be something quite amazing. Thanks for the opportunity to make that blurb. Yeah.
Great. Okay, and thank you, Davey. We've got a bit more time here, and if others want to get in the queue, please do. Jerry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Geoff. And thanks, David, for joining us today. It's great to have this program starting up here. I wanted to throw out just kind of something that I've been wondering about, and I would be very interested to hear if you have any thoughts on the role of AI in the climate crisis, for better or worse. Sometimes I think it's possibly our only hope, and then other times I think it's going to turn everything really bad. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
Another really good question, and the short answer is I don't know. I haven't studied it enough. I don't have enough of a sense of what is likely to happen. Jerry, why don't you say a little bit more from what you can see? What role might it play, positive and or negative?
Yeah, thanks. I'm not really a prognosticator. We're seeing the early days of it having, widespread effects in our society. And I've read a little bit about, the risk of, mutually assured destruction from an AI perspective, where countries are competing for using AI to dominate other countries or the world. So to me, that's very scary. On the other hand, I think the potential for solving problems, finding solutions, creative solutions, which seem to be coming out of AI these days, is just wide open. And then there's the other big threat, of course, is that AIs will get too smart and just say, we don't need humans anymore. So, there's lots of things that I worry and hope about it, but I don't know.
It's really hard to anticipate. I mean, it does seem huge, right? The biggest thing since the internet, maybe, or what? I mean, but it's hard to get a sense of how that's going to play out. And
yeah,
what can I say? Good luck to all of us. Thank you, Jerry.
Thanks, Jerry. Concha Mary, I see you have your hand. Thanks for joining in.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everyone. So around the AI question, I would recommend a couple of texts. One is James Bridell's Ways of Being, Animals, Plants, Machines, and the Search for Planetary Intelligence. I can't recommend that book enough. He does so many incredible things with the concept of AI. The other thing is, if you're into astrology at all, which I hope you are, you're Buddhist. I mean, the Buddha was even into astrology. We've moved into the era of Pluto and Aquarius is an ether element. And so the internet is ether. So the way that consciousness can travel actually is changing paths, right? We're not grounded necessarily in the material realm anymore. So consciousness is going through the ether now. And so I think that's another interesting thing to think about. Like if consciousness was going to come forward, even earth consciousness, what would be the vessel, the container that would reach us as human beings? So I think that's really fun to play with. You could also read, this is old, but still so good, Donna Haraway's Simian, Cyborg, and Women. And she makes a really interesting argument about the fact that we're not binary. We're not just humans here and machines here and humans here and animals here, right? So I would recommend those things. David, I loved your talk, and I was with you last week during your third act talk, so that was really wonderful as well. I am thinking about Tanesara right now, and I'm thinking about her call to bring Buddhists of all sects, right, to the table, because I think there are teachings that are trans dharma teachings, right? Like they transcend just the divisions that we've made even in Buddhism. So I'm wondering about that. She's doing just really incredible work, going down deep into the darkness. And she also calls for us to really, and I think this is where we as Zen Buddhists have sort of a great thing to offer. She calls for us to really ground ourselves and, be still and listen, because the earth and more than human beings have so much to teach us, and they have so much guidance for us if we would just open ourselves up to that. So, I would just extend even our conversations around like Sangha being just humans. Sangha is not just humans. We have to get away from that idea. We really need to start figuring out how to bring about everything into our places. Okay, so I'm wondering about those things. And what you said about joy is so good, because Tanesara just wrote, let me see if I can find it. Hold on a second. She just wrote this amazing piece. If you don't follow her, I would really recommend it, because she's just always so prolific in writing all these things. But she said, she said, this is from a teaching from Sahara, the teacher of what is his name? Nagarjuna?
Nagarjuna.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So listen, all appearances that present themselves to you are like flames spreading in a night forest. Behave in accordance with the root of the mind, which is emptiness. While suffering increases, bliss increases. The greater the mental afflictions, the mightier the primordial wisdom. The larger the pile of wood, the greater the blaze. So I love all these teachings. And also, shoot, I'm blanking out on this. Adam LaBelle, he also talks about being willing to actually, so sometimes I feel as Zen Buddhists, we like retract from the fire, from the heat, and we want to bring cool. And actually, I've been hearing so many Dharma wise elders say, no, actually, we need to go toward the heat. We need to go into the heat. And so he has a teaching about, because that's what causes blossoms to go, right? Is the seed and the darkness and then the heat. So anyway, I know that's a lot, but whatever you want to comment on, it would be great.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. I noticed that somebody put in Davey put in the connection, the link for that book you mentioned, which I don't know, but I will definitely check out. Yeah. Two quick comments. First of all, this talking about the greater Sangha. Thank you so much for mentioning that, right? There's a reason why bodhisattvas vow to save all sentient, all living beings. It's not just humans, right? And it's fascinating. Buddhism, like a lot of other Indian traditions, and unlike the Abrahamic, the focus isn't just on humans, but it's all, right? We take, like the first vow is not to kill living beings. It doesn't distinguish only humans. Yeah. So it's interesting. Sometime in the end of September or October, I'm going to actually be offering what will probably be a very small retreat at an animal sanctuary in the Grand Tetons up in Montana. And this sanctuary, they have wolves and bears, and I'm not sure, but I think also maybe a mountain lion. And in addition to sort of meditating and talking, we're going to be interacting with them, you know, making that connection, which I'm really looking forward to. Yeah, thank you. And there was one more thing, but I forgot it. Sorry. Yeah, maybe that's enough for the moment. Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. Thanks, David. Lee J from Beaverton outside of Portland. Right.
Hi, can you hear me?
Very well, very well.
Oh, good. Thank you. First of all, David Lloyd, thank you for your writings and your teachings and for this presentation today. I live in the US, so times are glum. And I normally these days wake up in a state of stress before I even fully come to consciousness, because it is terrifying. What's happened with, well, everything, but the EPA, I can't even, everyone knows on this call, but anyway, but I now feel a little bit better. There's going to be a presentation this weekend, this Sunday. Our Zendo, Brightway Zen, is going to be part of the Oregon Interfaith Earth Summit. We'll be a hub for that. It'll be our first time participating in that. And the reason that I enrolled us in that is because interfaith conversations are important to me. And this dovetails nicely with what you said, Conchi Mary Richards, is that the feeling of expansion past our categories we put ourselves in, our category of human versus other beings, our category of Buddhist versus Christian, our category of Zen Buddhist versus other Buddhists. I mean, these are preferences and delineations that they exist, but I'm not sure how necessary they are in some situations, and particularly now when times are so dire. I have been an activist in the past, but now I'm turning my focus toward interfaith, bridge building, and conversations. If you could comment on that, I would honor that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you for that. We talk about globalization, and when we talk and we think about, say, technologies, and we think about economics, and we think about science and technology, I think there's another really, really important aspect of globalization that we're just starting to come to grips with, and it's the globalization of our religions, right? I mean, religions, for the most part, developed in kind of a vacuum of their own. I mean, not completely, but they kind of carved out their own space and developed within that. They had their own evolutionary trajectory, a lot of it internal. We're in a situation now where globalization means all of these religious traditions cannot help but confront each other. And of course, sometimes there's reaction and fundamentalism and so forth. But there's also this great question, what can we learn from each other? And I think we're just starting to kind of come to grips with that and what that means, because we have so much to learn from each other. Maybe they can help us. I have this image in mind of a tumbling jar, like somebody who collects stones. You can tumble them in a jar that tends to polish them. It grinds off the rough edges. And I'm wondering if that's what maybe is going to happen with our religions, that it may help us distinguish what's contingent, what maybe is culturally dependent, doesn't necessarily apply so much in the modern world, from what is essential. And, at that time, we still we're still defining ourselves, right? I'm a Buddhist, I'm not a Christian or a Muslim, and I'm really excited that we may now be moving beyond that and learning from each other. Excuse me here. I'm going to put in a plug. I've just written a book that won't be out till next year. And the title, finally, Loving the World as Our Own Body. And the subtitle, Updating the Spiritual Path. And I talk about all the different religions, and every religion is complicated. It's not one thing. There's different streams, different aspects, different elements. And I try to show, where they've got into trouble because they're talking about some other reality. And maybe if we understand the path as realizing the true nature of this reality, and again, every religion has its mystics. Every religion has its strong tendency to do that. And that's one of the ways in which I think maybe we can learn from each other and realize that, it's not so much a matter of transcending or escaping this world, but rather realizing its true nature, which is also our own nature, and living in a way that embodies that. So I'm very excited. I mean, we're living at a really exciting time for interreligious dialogue too. And thank you for raising the issue.
Thanks, David. Thanks, David. And we are approaching the end of our time. Chris, how are you feeling? Do you want to take a minute and just prompt for next week before I wrap up?
I don't have much to say. And as you know, I'm not breathing very well with COVID. But let's just say next week, what we're going to be really interested in is how you're encountering, how we are each encountering issues of something like climate grief, issues of our exposure to and encounters with the wounded earth on our doorsteps. So if you have stories and experiences, advice that you want to bring next week, start to collect some of those up, and there'll be plenty of space for us to discuss them next week's session. Thanks, guys.